It is RAM review day, and today we're going to be looking at the Crucial Pro 5600. Ever since Crucial dropped the ballistics name in DDR4, we haven't really seen any aggressive plays in DDR5, so it was my first impressions thinking maybe this could be it or the start of something. Now there is a lot to talk about, so let's start off with the design. Not really much to talk about on design. As you can see, it is a pretty straightforward design. It is a heatsink and it has RAM with the RAM modules underneath. The only thing that I did pick up was that on some of the modules, not all of them, but this one in particular, there was a bit of a design flaw towards the top that if you're putting in the RAM, if you're not grabbing it perfectly in the center when you're slotting it in, the metal actually over pinches, and I'll show you a little bit closer up there. Other than that, no RGB, so I can't really elaborate too much on the design. It's an effective heatsink, as we'll see in the temperatures. Next, onto the specs, and I'm going to show you this in a overhead. First and foremost, it is DDR5 and it is a kit. It comes in 2x16. There are other variants and you'd have to check the Crucial page, but the one that I have is 16x2, totaling 32 gigs. Voltage is standard DDR5 at 1.1. and the CAS latency is 46 with extended timing of 46, 45, 45. Crucial Pro also supports AMD Expo as well as Intel XMP 3.0. So spec-wise, nothing really to write home about. It does have a good frequency at 5600, but the CAS latencies are quite high, starting at 46. But performance is what matters most, so let's jump straight into the results. I'm going to start off with the latencies, and I do have another DDR5 comparison, which is the Gil Polaris. Now, the Crucial hit a 34.06 on memtest latency, whereas the Gil Polaris hit a 33.74. This is because the CAS latency of the Gil Polaris was lower at 38 with the same frequency. We do have references right next to that for DDR4, and we can see the Gil Orion there for the DDR4 variant, as well as Patriot Steel Viper, to show that DDR5 in general does have a lower latency, well, at least when it comes to memtest. If you look at AIDA64 latency, a little bit different from the results that we got from memtest, in this hit an 80.2 millisecond latency. Now this was a little bit different, but not too vastly different from the 74.4 from the Gil Polaris. The again 38 CAS latency at the same frequency. Then again, just for reference, we have the Gil Orion DDR4 hitting a 71.9 and the Patriot at a 74.9. So the Crucial Pro not doing too well in the AIDA latency test. Passmark latency also mirroring a little bit what AIDA64 had, in that the Crucial Pro was the worst, and this was a 53 on latency compared to the Gil Polaris of 51 and the Orion DDR4 at 42. But if we take a blend of all of them, it is good latency, but it is not great latency. Looking at memtest 86 on the transfer speeds, the Crucial Pro hit a 54,691, which is slightly below what the Gil Polaris did in 55,871. Then those results vastly different or better than the Gil Orion DDR4 and the Patriot Steel Viper DDR4. When it comes to the AIDA64 read, write, and copy, higher obviously being better, we see good results in read being 67,619, the write being 71,203, and the copy being 67,443. Now these results very close to the Gil Polaris with a much lower CAS latency, in a couple of thousand difference across all three measures. The only real difference being the 60,000 versus 63,000, where the Gil Polaris dominated the Crucial Pro. Again, just for reference, and you can read this at your leisure, the Gil Orion DDR4 and the Patriot Steel Viper results also there, but interesting to note that we have much better performance on write coming out of DDR5. Passmark overall scores, the Crucial Pro hitting a 3650, which is very similar to what the Gil Polaris did in a 3726. But if we look at the Gil Orion, that hit a 3569 on DDR4. So again, DDR5 still young and it has to optimize results, and maybe all the different types of tests aren't very optimized towards DDR5 yet. I also did a memory speed test in memtest 86, and this was XMP versus Expo. The graphs look pretty identical, but I do think that XMP did have an edge in this. Performance overall, I didn't want to go too deep into the results because we can see from the CAS latency as well as the frequency, it is a pretty standard form factor RAM that is meant for everyday use. One thing that I will say on performance is that I found this RAM quite fun to play with. What do I mean by this? It's that I could easily overclock it, and I got it from 5600 to 6000 on pretty much standard JEDEC settings. Now I tried this first of all with an MSI BIOS, and I had to actually end up rolling the BIOS back and I couldn't get it stable. This isn't a stab at MSI, it's just DDR5 is sometimes a little bit more unstable because it is again very new. But when I put it into an ASRock machine, I could get an easy overclock to 6000 on JEDEC settings. And I think this is a compliment on the RAM being able to be easily stabilized. And when I get more motherboards, I'll obviously try it with them too. So on to the conclusion, I do think that individual experience will vary, but I have to take this on face value as to what I experienced. I think the performance was adequate, but as mentioned, I did have issues in BIOS, but this could be a reflection on both the RAM as well as the BIOS, but I think it's more of a stability and a teething issue when it comes to BIOS itself. So it's not going to break any records, and you're not going to have any massive performance gains if you're currently on 5200. But 5600 is slowly becoming the base. Actually, 6000 is slowly starting to become the base for DDR5. But it's clean and it works and it looks professional, and that's why I think they call it maybe Crucial Pro. Now the price comes in at $2199. Now I checked this a few weeks ago, and at that time the price is really good to the performance. But as time has passed, when I checked a few days ago, it actually wasn't as relative anymore, and I actually saw G.Skill with a lower CAS and the same frequency at about 200 Rand cheaper. So I do think that the price of this should be at around about a 1899 or 1799, but with the way that things are going in components, it's almost like spinning a wheel as to what the price is going to be next week. But otherwise, again, it was a stable, clean, clinical performance, and if you're looking for something that is just going to plug and play and work, it is definitely something that you might want to look at. But if you are an extremist and want something a little bit more oomphy, you're going to have to look elsewhere for that kind of RAM. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed the review. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers and goodbye.